Welcome everyone to tonight's live where I'm going to be talking about detoxing, and basically I want to share with you my journey, which started with detoxing and primarily fasting. But I want to talk a little bit more about like a big picture overview of how I think about detoxing and why it's important to detox. And so for everyone who may be brand new to the group, I started my journey back in 2012, and the things that were happening in 2012, as far as what was going on with me, that got me into wanting to take care of my body, wanting to take care of my health, my gut health specifically, was that I was tired all the time. My hair was falling off. I couldn't really sleep. I was gaining weight out of control, and all of these things were just building up. And at the time, I didn't understand what was going on. All that I was being told was that I was going to have to take hormones for the rest of my life. And at the time, when I first heard that, it was one of those moments where at first I'm like, okay, like that's going to be, whatever. Like if I have to, I have to. But in the back of my mind, I was wondering, there's got to be a way. Like there's got to be a way to help your body produce hormones. Like it doesn't make sense to me that we don't know how to do this kind of stuff. And so I started to research health, and I actually started out looking for ways to get energy, because at the time I had no energy. I had to push myself to do things, and I just wanted to basically live a normal life. I didn't want to be stuck at home and turning down invitations to go out with friends or anything like that, just because I was too tired to do anything. And so as I started to research, I started to find out how much of the things that I was looking for, how much of that happens in your gut. Hormone production, nutrient deficiencies, so many things were all like, it all started in the gut. And so my big epiphany came when I started to learn and understand that 80% of your immune system is your gut flora, which is probiotics. It's what makes vitamins, key nutrients, hormones. Basically, they do everything for you. And the interesting part about this was that when I was researching and going through all of this, my background at the time, I was teaching how to brew beer. And I actually wrote a book, brew beer and drink it, right? So I wrote this book teaching how to brew beer, and I didn't understand that what I was doing when it comes to brewing beer was learning how to grow probiotics. And I didn't make that connection that what lives inside of our guts is probiotics. The same probiotics that we use to brew beer, to make wine, to make mead, sauerkraut, sourdough, kimchi, all of these fermented foods and beverages, they are made using the same probiotics that we need in our guts. And so when I had that epiphany where I said, wait a second, the same yeast and bacteria that we use to ferment stuff, it's what we need to grow in our guts. And that's what makes vitamins for us. It's what makes hormones for us. It's what produces energy for us. It's what digests food for us, right? That was a big epiphany moment, because then I had this realization that, hey, if I can brew beer, if I can grow probiotics by brewing beer, why can't I take those same concepts and start growing probiotics in my gut if that's what's going to help me produce vitamins, address nutrient deficiencies, produce hormones, produce energy. And not only that, all of a sudden it made sense why, when I was researching and reading up on why was I experiencing things like gas, bloating, constipation, why I was getting weight out of control. Well, it had to do with the fact that you have bad bacteria that can colonize in your gut. And this to me was basically, that was that moment when I said, okay, this is the challenge that I have to solve. Because what it basically meant was, if you ever experience things like yeast overgrowth, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or some sort of parasite or bacteria that gets into your gut and colonizes, that essentially is the equivalent as having a spoiled batch of beer. Okay, and so in brewing terms, basically what we would do is it's too hard to fix. We literally would throw everything away that was porous, so any kind of wood material, wood spoons or anything that we would use that came in contact with that batch, we would throw it away because porous materials are very hard to clean and sanitize. But anything that was non-porous, like glass, that can be cleaned and sanitized. And so we were able to basically salvage that. But that was basically the process: is we dump everything out and then we clean and sanitize the equipment and basically start over from scratch. And so I took that concept and realized and said, okay, if I have yeast overgrowth, if I have some sort of bad bacteria in my gut, the only way, the only way that I know how to fix it is to do that same exact process, which is to dump everything out, clean and sanitize. Okay, and nobody else that I knew of, that I went to talk to, no doctor, no naturopath, no functional medicine practitioner, ever told me about this. This was just something that made sense to me because of my brewing background, because I realized that what I needed to do to fix my energy issues, my sleep issues, my hormone issues, was basically I needed to restructure my entire gut flora. How do you restructure your gut flora? You have to grow probiotics and you have to get rid of the bad bacteria. And that's basically what I started to do. And that's the reason why now part of my diet includes some sort of routine maintenance where I'm cleaning up my body, because I now realize that I have to maintain a clean environment, because this is where probiotics live. Your gut is where your probiotics live. And I can tell you that I was 28 years old when a lot of this was happening to me. And prior to that, I did not care about health at all. And I had no idea what the consequences were of me eating foods that were not good for me. I didn't know what were real foods versus non-real foods, right? And so a lot of these things just started to make sense. And so there's different levels that I go to when it comes to detoxing. And I want to talk a little bit about each of these different levels. But I want to give you like that big picture overview, so that if you ever undertake detoxing, you can actually go at it with, a good understanding of what is it that's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually illustrate this, because it'll be a little bit easier than if I just speak out loud. But basically, here's what's going on. Okay, so one of the realizations that I had was that, your gut, this is basically where all your probiotics live, right? And so we have good probiotics. We want to basically increase the population of good probiotics. And if you have bad bacteria, okay, when I say bad bacteria, I'm using that word as an umbrella to refer to everything from yeast overgrowth, bad bacteria, parasites, mold, fungus, candida, protea. Like there's all kinds of creatures that can live in your gut. Okay, and so all of it combined, okay, your bad bacteria, your good bacteria, and then the environment inside, right, your gut, that's basically what is your microbiome. Okay, it's like an entire city, if you will. Okay, you can treat it kind of like that. And so for me, what I borrowed from brewing beer was understanding that both good bacteria and bad bacteria, the only way that these creatures can grow in your body is based on the environment. Okay, the overall environment, that's basically what your microbiome is. It's not just your gut wall lining, it's not just, your small intestine or your stomach. It's basically everything, which includes the amount of water that's in those cells. Okay, not just the water that's kind of like flowing through, but how much water are the cells of your body actually uptaking, which in other words is how hydrated are you. Okay, so if you are in the group there's a reason why I start everyone with a hydration challenge. It's because I know that most people are dehydrated. Okay, it's a challenge. Why? Because nobody drinks water. I didn't drink water. I used to drink a lot of beer, which dehydrates you. Right now, I'm gonna be open and honest because, like, today I'm here showing up as just myself. This is what I do. I brew beer. I teach beer, and now I teach health through the lessons that I got from brewing beer, which taught me that the ingredients that we use to brew beer are basically water. We need minerals, right? Same thing, your environment and your microbiome, you need a certain amount of minerals. Okay, if you're dehydrated, if you're demineralized, that gives growth to bad bacteria. Okay, then there's pH. Okay, pH is, you can think of it as it's acidic, it's alkaline, but another way of thinking of pH is voltage. So there's a reason why if you have an acidic pH, there's a reason why you have no energy. There's a reason why your voltage is low. Your batteries are drained. Okay, it's basically what's going on. And so when your pH, when your voltage drops, guess what is at the other side? Bad bacteria. Okay, because they release a lot of toxins. That's what's dropping your pH. Okay, and this is kind of like one of those, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is the bad bacteria there because you have low pH, low voltage, or do you have low voltage because you have bad bacteria? Okay, either way, this is basically what's going on. This is the direct correlation, that, or you know what I mean, the correlation that is between these two. Then there's temperature. Okay, man, I can't spell today. All right, so there's temperature. And then last, I talk about probiotics. So this is basically what I learned from brewing beer, right? In order for me to grow probiotics, which in brewing beer is basically brewers' yeast and or bacteria in the case of sour beers, I needed to have the right amount of water and quality of water, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, minerals, proper pH, temperature, and then I would be able to grow those probiotics. The same thing happens in your gut. Okay, this was my epiphany. This is why like this stuff made so much sense to me, where I got to a point where I kind of like started looking around and said, wow, like how can nobody really see this? Because I see people eating stuff that just doesn't belong in the body. And when you start to look at this, okay, your health is just like the health of a tree. Okay, if the leaves start falling, okay, if the leaves start turning brown, if they start wilting, if you start getting little holes, the problem is not at the leaf, it's at the root, right? So when you say find the root cause, okay, everyone wants to find the root cause of their issues. That root cause is your gut, it's the root system, because if your tree doesn't have water, right? If you don't water your plants, your trees, if the soil doesn't have minerals, if the soil doesn't have the proper pH, or if it's not the right temperature, then you're not going to be able to grow your tree. You're not going to be able to grow as a human. Okay, it's the same thing, right? So when this stuff started to make sense, I realized that, okay, here's a problem that I have. I have something that has colonized in my gut, which means that I'm either dehydrated, I'm lacking minerals, my pH is too low, or my body temperature is, not where it needs to be. In my case, it was low, which all of these checked, right? My hands were cold, my feet were cold, my pH was low, my vitamin D levels were at 22 nanograms per deciliter. I didn't drink water. I didn't really mineralize my water back then. And so all of these checked true for me, and that's why it made sense for me to start hydrating, for me to start adding minerals to my water, for me to start boosting my vitamin D levels. And the reason for vitamin D is because without sunshine, okay, your tree doesn't grow. Vitamin D affects how much calcium your body can uptake and hold. So your bone structure is affected by this. So if you're feeling joint pain, if you're feeling like your bones are deteriorating, why do you think that we find low levels of vitamin A and D in these situations? It's because that's what allows your body to uptake calcium, and calcium is what we used to brew beer to manage the pH, to change the pH. We either use gypsum salt, which is basically calcium, and or we'll use calcium carbonate, right? They're two salts, but they both use calcium as a way to regulate pH. Now, pH, there's a lot to be learned about pH, but I just want to fill in some details so that you get to see my perspective, so that you get to understand my story and how I came about and started this project that I call Beer Diet Project, which is not a specific diet, but it's really more about understanding what's happening to your body based on the foods that you are eating. And so here's where my detox started. Okay, so I started to understand that, okay, I have bad bacteria in my gut. So in order for me to get rid of this bad bacteria, I need to empty out my gut, meaning prior to me starting my journey, my day-to-day life was basically I would eat right before going to sleep because I was always hungry, right? So I would eat right before going to sleep. And, this is like 10:30 at night. I go to bed. At the time, I would be lucky if I would get 4 hours of sleep. I would toss and turn all night. I would wake up, walk like a zombie. And first thing that I wanted to do was basically eat. You wouldn't be able to talk to me if I hadn't had something to eat because I would be hangry at the time. And basically, I would start eating from the moment I woke up. And then I used to hear back then that, hey, you have to do 7 small meals a day. And so I would space out my 7 meals a day and, kind of basically snack throughout the day. And I was just constantly eating all the time. And so I want you to visualize what this looked like for me. It was basically me putting food into my body constantly and not allowing that food to go through my digestive tract and out. And all of that food, when it doesn't leave the body, it creates abnormal fermentation. Something has to break it down. And this is where things started to make sense to me. So let me talk about what was it that I did, which is not what I recommend everyone starts out with, but it's what I did. Okay, I'm here just to share my story, and I want you to understand what I did, but I also want you to understand that I've learned a lot since I started, and there's a reason why I follow a certain order for things, and it's because if you try to do what I do right now, especially for those of you who are following my detox journey, what I'm doing right now is advanced. There's no way that I would do this starting out. Okay, you're more than welcome to try anything that I do, but I'm not telling anyone here to do anything as far as what I'm currently doing right now. But I want you to understand these concepts, okay? So the first thing that I did, okay, this is in 2012, late 2012, early 2013, I did my very first green juice fast. And the way that I started that was I actually set out to do 3 days. Okay, at the time, I had never skipped a meal in my life before, and I was I was seriously terrified. I was scared. I was like, I didn't think that I was going to be able to do even 1 day of fasting. Like the idea, the thought that I wasn't going to put any kind of solid food into my body. I was just going to drink green juice, which at the time I'm looking at this green juice thinking like, this is liquid grass. Like, how am I going to live off of this? Okay, this is where I was at when I started. But this is what I did. And the only reason why I went for it was because on the other side of this, I saw this picture and realized that, okay, something's fermenting in my gut that's giving growth to bad bacteria. And if I just do this green juice, okay, if I do green juice, fresh press that I made at home, basically what that was going to do was going to allow me to get some sort of nourishment without any sort of digestion. Okay, because with juicing, you remove all of the fiber. Okay, some people will ask like, well, isn't fiber good for you? Or, some of you are going to naturopaths or functional medicine practitioners and they're like, oh, here, you got to take some probiotics, but make sure that you take these prebiotics because prebiotics are good, right? That's like their what a lot of these guys think is like the highest, the most up-to-date knowledge is you got to do prebiotics. Well, prebiotics is basically fiber. It's basically food for bacteria. The problem with doing fiber and or prebiotics when you have bad bacteria is that it's food for bacteria. So you're not only feeding your probiotics, which, if you have gut issues, chances are that you don't have enough probiotics, and chances are that you have more bad bacteria, which means you're actually feeding a lot of your bad bacteria with the foods that you are eating. This is what made sense to me, and this is why doing green juice, which has no fiber, okay, it's just liquid. It's the reason why part of my detox I'm doing right now is blue-green algae, which is just liquid. It requires no digestion. Okay, no digestion means that these guys can't grow. Okay, that's basically what that means. And so for me, drinking green juice and or just water was a way for me to empty out my gut. It was a way for me to push stuff out. And so I did 3 days. First day, I was hungry, I was cranky, but I got through. Okay, that was my whole goal. It's like I just wanted to go through day one and, wake up the next day, make sure that, I didn't die from fasting. I woke up the next day, and here's where things started to change. Okay, when I woke up the next day, I was expecting to be extremely hungry. I'm thinking, man, like I'm 24 hours, didn't have anything, here goes another day. But actually what happened was I woke up and I didn't really feel any more hungry than I did the day before. It was just like waking up normally. And so day two was a little bit easier, even though I was still hungry, but it was easier because I realized, okay, if I did one day, I can do 2 days and then 3 days. And then somewhere around day 4 or 5, what happened was that I went to sleep and I had the most vivid lucid dream where I felt like I was awake in the dream. Okay, it was such a deep state of sleep, and I hadn't gotten sleep that good in who knows how long. Like the last time I remember having a dream like that was like literally like probably like in my late teens, early 20s, and I woke up from that dream. And instead of waking up and dragging, I literally, as soon as I woke up, I just sprung up, like sat up. I was sitting up in bed. And it was the first time in a long time that I felt like the sleep that I had gotten was refreshing. Like I was restored. I was ready to take on the day. And it was the first time in so long that I felt so good that I realized there was something to this whole fasting thing. And so this is where I started to get really interested in how do I fix my gut? Like, what do I need to do to fix my gut? And so I started to do more research, and I started to understand that what is going on inside of your gut. If you want to optimize your microbiome, basically what that means is you got to learn how to grow probiotics in your gut. So when people ask me like, hey, what is Beer Diet Project all about? I'm essentially teaching people how to grow probiotics in your gut. It's almost like I'm teaching you how to brew beer, but I'm just teaching you like how your body functions, like how your body grows probiotics. What's the environment? How do you control that environment? And I start out with concepts that are so simple. It's hard to not do this. Okay, like to me, this makes sense. Putting toxic stuff into my body doesn't make sense. And that's what detoxing is. And so detoxing for me, it's not only, okay, I got to maintain a clean environment, and that starts with what goes into your body. And so that's kind of like what I want to talk about, today. Before I go on, let me check in with you guys here on Facebook and see who's all watching. Janae gets a cold in the winter. Lupa is here. Christina, love it. Monica, 5% water, so everyone needs water to replace water. Cool. So, all right. So check this out. Here's like how simple and stupid this was to me. And again, I'm going to be reading off of, this is a book on brewing beer. I wrote this with the intent to teach how to brew beer, not to teach health. But when you read it, I should have bookmarked that page, but when you read this, here it is, okay? It's a chapter on water, all right? And so when you read this and you think about how this applies to the body, it just makes sense, okay? So here's basically what, what I was saying in the book. I was talking about, water, it's such a complex topic, but for me and for brewing purposes, there's two things that I focus on in water: what's good and what's not good. What's good, it's minerals and carbonates. And carbonates is more for brewing purposes, although that does play a part in health. And then what's not good, contaminants. Okay, so in the topic of contaminants, I talked about how if you have contaminants such as chlorine, chloramines, fluoride, lead, and there's a bunch of these different contaminants, you don't want to have that in your brewing water because it affects yeast. Now, when I wrote that, I wasn't thinking that yeast lived in my gut, that probiotics like yeast lived in my gut. After I had that realization, I went back and read that. I said, wait a second, if I don't brew beer with water that has chlorine, chloramines, or any other sort of contaminant because it affects probiotics, why would I drink that water if the same probiotics live in my gut? And so you can start to see how all of the sudden things just start to make sense to me, where I'm basically looking at my gut and thinking, okay, if I'm going to grow probiotics here, I'm essentially brewing beer. I need to start out with clean water, right? So, anyone that's brand new in the group, you see people posting pictures of their water in mason jars, right? So, everyone's using a little mason jar. Okay, and the reason for it is because I talk about the importance of the cleanliness of water. So this is where detoxing starts. If you're drinking water and you haven't checked what's in your water, if you haven't checked the water quality report, I can tell you that there's probably a lot of contaminants that are in your water, and that's affecting your microbiome. That's affecting your gut health. It's affecting your probiotics. Okay, and you can Google, go to Google. I should promote DuckDuckGo now on, but anyways, you can search water quality report, and then whatever city and state you're in, and every city makes this available, and you can download it. And I mean, you're probably not gonna understand much of it, but it basically is going to list all the major contaminants, the ones that are tested, because there's a lot that aren't tested. And so to me, this is basically where I started to realize and understand, okay, if I'm gonna use the best water to brew beer, why am I not gonna use the best water for my health? Okay, so the reason why I use glass is because I have a water distilling machine. A water distilling machine, basically what it is a machine that boils water, it builds steam, and then that steam is condensed down into a glass jar. Do not buy distilled water at the store. Okay, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see people make. When you have distilled water is powerful cleaning water. Okay, pure H2O, it's like a magnet. It literally attracts everything to it. Everything wants to dissolve into it. So if you're buying distilled water at the store, it comes in a plastic jug. All the contaminants in that plastic, plastic is a byproduct of the oil refinery process. All of those contaminants are going to leach into the water, and it's going to make your water acidic. That's not good water to drink. Okay, I have a distilling water machine, and I put everything in glass so that it doesn't get contaminated, or that nothing leaches into the water. BPA caps are okay, but anyways, that's basically part of it. Okay, so part of my process was, okay, like if I'm going to brew beer, and this is how I'm thinking, like, how do I grow probiotics in my gut? It's, just like brewing beer. I need to make sure that I'm drinking the right amount of water, right? I gotta reach a certain level of hydration. So the quantity is the first thing that I look at. Minerals will be the second thing that I look at. And then from there, I'm going to assume that you at least have a relatively safe and clean, water source that you're using to drink. But again, this is where variables start to throw me off guard. So if you don't have a water distilling machine, your hydration is not going to be as sufficient as my hydration. Okay, and this is where we start to separate. This is where people that say that, oh, I tried the whole hydration thing and it didn't work. What kind of water did you use? Okay, maybe for you, I don't know what's worse, drinking contaminated water or dehydrating yourself. Okay, why choose one of those two, right? It's, why not make it a goal to get yourself a clean source of water? These things, like, to me, are so important because I understand what's going on in your gut. And to most people, to the average person, the idea of having a distilling water machine at home is foreign. It was foreign to me. Like, the only reason why I do it is because of my brewing background. Otherwise, who owns a water distilling machine? Like, the closest to that will be reverse osmosis, but even that is not nearly as good. But anyway, so this is basically where it all starts, right? So fasting became a tool because, I'm not putting food into my digestive tract, so I'm giving my body a break. I'm using clean water, okay, to hydrate. And now I start looking at all of my food through that lens. Okay. And I go back to thinking about, okay, everything that I eat, okay, everything from a piece of gum to your main meal, everything that you eat is going to have an impact on your microbiome, meaning that something is going to feed inside of your gut. When you're eating, it's not you that's chewing, breaking up food, and then you're the one that, okay, I ate. That's not how it works. When you're eating, what you're doing is you're breaking down food into small components, and then that food goes down to your gut, and in your gut, microbes, different type of bacteria, they eat that food. So really, you're not feeding your body, you're feeding the bacteria that lives in your gut. And so what makes this complicated for people to understand is that when you have bad bacteria that colonize in your gut, it doesn't matter how good the food that you eat is, because you're still going to be feeding a lot of the bad bacteria in there until you restructure, change out the environment, optimize your microbiome. But this is how you start. You start out by, first of all, eating foods that are good, and understand that, hey, you're not going to see a difference right away just from eating good foods, but it's the first step regardless. Because to me, what I realized was what caused a lot of the growth of bad bacteria in my gut was a combination of, one, again, I'm going to be honest, drinking too much beer, having a sweet tooth. Okay, I used to have a sweet tooth. I used to get dessert pretty much every single day after lunch and dinner. So I mean, trust me, like, I'm normal just like everyone else, have the same sugar cravings as everyone else. But that's what made sense to me. It's like, okay, there's a reason why you have sugar cravings. If you have yeast overgrowth, yeast eat sugar. It's not you that's craving sugar, it's what lives in your gut that craves sugar, and yeast crave a lot of sugar, which is why it's hard, and it was hard for me to give up things like bread and carbs and other things like that. And so that was like the first thing that I had to change. Like, okay, what kind of foods am I eating? Starting out by, okay, make sure that I'm not eating too much sugar. Okay, that's, kind of like basic. But then I started to look into where my food comes from. Because if you're buying food that is grown in places, in soils that don't have good quality water, the right amount of water, minerals, the proper pH, the proper temperature, the bacteria that's in the soil, that's at the root of the plants that you're eating, is not going to be good bacteria. And every time that you eat, like when you eat a cabbage has like an entire microbiome in and of itself. And if that cabbage was grown in soil that wasn't healthy, that cabbage isn't healthy. The microbes in there aren't healthy. And that's basically, as you're eating that food, that's what you're like composting in your gut. You're composting, you're culturing bad bacteria. Okay, and so what people don't realize is that our entire food system is screwed. I was gonna use another word, but I'll keep it PG. It's screwed. It's bad. Okay, it's not good. A lot of the food that people are eating is demineralized, and that's the reason why you have to use pesticides, herbicides, and things like that. It's because these plants are weak. Okay, they're not mineralized, so they can't grow on their own, and they use fertilizers, which only use three minerals: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay, that's good enough to grow the plant, but it doesn't provide any nourishment. It doesn't provide key nutrients. Like, it doesn't really give you what you need. And what a lot of people don't understand, and I think this, okay, let me draw this out, because this, if you understand this concept, and especially for those of you who are eating a lot of bread in your diets, if you eat bread, okay, it's a carbohydrate. Okay, there's a difference between a dry carbohydrate and a water-rich carbohydrate. Like a cucumber, if you eat a cucumber that has so much water, it's actually going to hydrate you, because there's so much water in that cucumber. And if it's, organic, if it's grown in soils that's mineralized, you're getting mineralized water out of that cucumber. Most food today is processed to where it doesn't have those minerals. And especially if you're eating things like bread, pasta, a lot of these corn, wheat, soy type of products, when you're eating that bread, your body needs to digest that bread. And in order for your body to digest that bread, it needs water, it needs minerals, it needs a proper pH temperature and bacteria. Well, when you're eating that bread, since the bread itself doesn't have water and it doesn't have minerals, okay, what happens is that when it hits your gut, your body, okay, says, oh, I have bread that I need to digest. So now it's going to source out water and minerals out of its own body. So you're going to dehydrate yourself. You're going to demineralize yourself just so that you can digest this food. And so when you're eating these foods, whether it's bread, whether it's veggies that don't have any minerals, that aren't grown in healthy soils, okay, I don't care, this is why, like, being vegan is not necessarily healthy if you're not buying food from the right places, right? Because this is what you're looking for. You're looking to hydrate, you're looking to mineralize. And if the food that you're eating doesn't have that, your body needs to source it out from itself. And so it's going to dehydrate, demineralize itself. And chances are that these have some sort of pesticide or something to basically keep them stable, right? A lot of these fruits and vegetables are sometimes, sprayed with some sort of food preservative. All of that going into your gut will affect all of these things. And so detoxing, in a way, starts out by choosing what you put into your body every single day. And this is why, like, what you're going to see me do, part of my detox today, and well, when I say today, I'm talking about like the next few days. I'm going to be doing a lot of fasting, and the one food, okay, that I'm going to be doing is blue-green algae. Okay, and I'm going to be sending out an email newsletter on this. But blue-green algae basically has pretty much everything that you need. Right now, I'm kind of like, this week is a bit of a transitioning week for me, I guess. There's a couple things that I'm going to be trying out. Like, I've been drinking a ketogenic smoothie all day long, but I'm basically doing plant-based. And for those of you who are brand new, I just got done with about 6 months of trying out a nose-to-tail carnivore-ish type of diet with avocado and sauerkraut. So it's not true carnivore. I still have some plants in my diet. Prior to that, I was doing a similar detox to today, into what I'm doing now, which is just a plant-based ketogenic type of diet. But that's the thing that I understand, is that plants are really good for detoxing. Okay. And again, what has gotten me into this is, brewing literature, like everything that I'm teaching you guys. I'm not a doctor. I didn't really study health. Everything I'm teaching out of brewing books. Okay. Hops, Sacred Herbal and Healing Beers. This book is a book on all kinds of different herbs and plants that, you know, people used to use because there's a belief, okay, ancient nutrition and ancient cultures believe that for pretty much every bad bacteria that's out there, there's a plant, okay, that will help you get rid of it. Okay, that's where plants come in, and that's why a lot of these are sacred and they're herbal and medicinal. They're not for recreational purposes. You know, beer turned into more of a recreational drink, but prior to it being a recreational drink, it was called an ale. And ales were just that. It was fermented beverages that provided vitamins and probiotics. Okay, and a lot of these older ales were actually sour beers because of lactobacillus, which is one of the main probiotics. And so this is where a lot of my knowledge, you know, comes from. And so where I'm at right now is I'm at a phase where I'm fasting because I'm trying to empty out my gut, and I'm trying to basically clean the slate, you know, clean the environment, which I've done multiple times because there's layers to this. Okay, you're going to start cleaning out and you're going to find that you're going to pull stuff out, and then you're going to be able to do some things, but you can't be detoxing forever. Okay, that's the biggest thing is, you know, sometimes people learn about detoxing through a plant-based diet, and when you get onto it, it feels good, right? It feels good when you're detoxing. You're, you know, if you're like, I did a raw vegan diet for about 9 months when I first started out, and I felt amazing. I'm like this whole time I'm thinking like, man, like I don't know if I'm gonna ever eat meat again because I feel so good on a plant-based diet. But then you hit a point. Okay, you hit a point where your body's just breaking down, and you gotta build. Okay, and so part of my detox now, like what I do, it's phases, right? So I'm gonna detox for a period, and then I'm gonna go back to a diet where I'm building up, and I'm gonna detox, and that's basically how I do, you know, my diet. So you know, my diet is not like, it's different because I'm thinking about these things. I'm not eating for pleasure, and I'm a foodie. I love food. I like all kinds of food, and I do include certain periods or phases in my life where I allow myself to, you know, just try out new foods, or maybe, you know, foods that I just, you know, enjoy that I know I shouldn't really be eating. But again, I'm human. I like the taste and stuff like that, but I know what's happening inside of me. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't do those diets that much more, you know, that much anymore. And that's because I just enjoy feeling good. I mean, if anyone that's ever experienced feeling chronically fatigued all the time, to go from that to actually having energy to do what you want, to getting really good sleep, it changes you. Like now you know exactly what you're doing to get energy. You know exactly what you're doing to improve your sleep. You know, I at the heaviest I was at about 208 pounds, and right now I'm the leanest I've ever been. Okay, I'm 36 years old. This is the first time in my entire life that I've had some sort of definition in my abs. Prior to this, I didn't have any definition, no matter how hard I worked out, no matter how much I dieted. And a lot of it was because there was just too much bad bacteria in my gut, too much toxicity being created. And that's what creates body fat, right? So these are things that I started to understand. And as I do a lot of these experiments, these are things that I'm looking for. It's like, okay, the more that I detox, the leaner my body should get, right? So that's one way to measure how toxic is your body. Okay, how much body fat do you have? If you have a lot of body fat, that is basically a sign of how toxic your body is. Okay, the more you lean down, that's how you measure how good are your efforts at cleaning and basically detoxifying your body. Okay, so all of these concepts is basically what I started to teach, and there's, you know, different ways to go about this, because again, no one that I ever talked to was able to fix gut issues. Okay, a lot of people will promise you that, hey, you know, we have all these protocols and this and that, and you know, you go see all these professionals, and you know, some of these are good people, like they're well intended, they have a lot of good knowledge, but at the end of the day, okay, a few $1,000s later, when they put you through all the lab testing and all the different supplements that they have you on, you end up the same or sometimes worse if they don't know what they're doing. And that's the kind of stuff that I was seeing, and realized that, wait a second, you don't need supplements. Okay, supplements, when like, this is like one of the things that I see that really, um, I mean, on one hand, like I feel so bad for people because they don't know any better, but on the other side, it's also like it makes it harder for me to actually help people because supplements, the difference between supplement and what I use, okay, because sometimes people hear me say like, okay, I do vitamin D. And when I say I do vitamin D, I'm referring to fermented cod liver oil plus butter oil. That to me is not a supplement. That to me is food. It's a fermented food. It's ancient nutrition. And here's the difference between supplements and food. Supplements are usually like, here's a vitamin D supplement. So you're basically taking just vitamin D. Food, okay, fermented cod liver oil happens to have vitamin D, but it's not a vitamin D supplement. It's food, which means it has vitamin D, vitamin A, and a lot of other nutrients and minerals that go along with that. So it's a complete food. That's the difference, okay? So if you're taking a supplement, okay, I don't care if it's a vitamin D, D3, or if you're taking that plus K2 or whatever they have you do, nothing's going to mimic what nature gives you as a whole and complete food, okay? And so that is another way to detox is all of these supplements that people are taking are sometimes making you more toxic as opposed to actually helping you. And it's one of the things that I do when I work with people is I look at what they're doing. And the first thing is like, I want to get people off of supplements as soon as possible and get them into real food, real nutrition, because that's how they're going to make progress faster with real nutrition. Okay, that's basically how I operate. And a lot of that is also because there are certain components in food that you can use for cleaning purposes. And again, this is where my brewing knowledge, comes into play. Like, again, I have a lot of these books on brewing beer where, they teach about bad bacteria, how to clean and sanitize. And as I became familiar with, I did bookmark this one. So here's an entire table. You probably can't read that, but this describes like all the different things that you see with different types of like bad bacteria, going from just regular, I guess, gram negative bacteria all the way to like parasites, but you don't really see too much on parasites here because the chances of you growing parasites with beer aren't too, they're not common, but there are some protea, which, there's, different things that will give growth to different other creatures. But anyways, all of these things, okay, all of that bad bacteria and stuff, they can all be managed through different plants and herbs. And here's the thing, the purpose of detoxing isn't to get rid of the bad bacteria. That's the biggest mistake that people make is they try to get rid of the bad bacteria. Like the worst thing that I hear people say is that they take antibiotics, which wipes out everything. Okay. We want probiotics. Biotics, the word biotics means life. Pro means for life. Antibiotics is against life. It just kills everything. It's the worst thing you can do because even if you go and kill everything, what's going to grow in your gut is dependent on the environment in your gut. And so if you go kill everything, but you haven't hydrated, you haven't mineralized, you haven't boosted your vitamin D levels, meaning you haven't helped your body regulate its pH level, guess what's going to grow back in your gut? Bad bacteria. But now you have a problem that you also wiped out a lot of your good bacteria, so now you're even weaker. Okay, this stuff makes sense to me, but to a lot of people, it doesn't until they experience it, and now they're trying to figure out, like, how do I go about it? Well, same way you're going to have to go about it regardless. You have to hydrate, you're going to have to clean, start eating clean, and start to detox. And how do I detox? I do a lot of fasting. I do a lot of green juices. I do Ayurvedic herbs and different herbs, but this is where I have to kind of like slow down because it's not about doing all of these things. It's about developing a habit of eating clean and then continuously cleaning your body and easing into cleaning, because when you start getting into some of these herbs, okay, and this is why, and I just had a class with my coaching clients where I talked about this, where I said, hey, there's some herbs that are potent, okay? Some of these herbs, like they said, they're healing, they're medicinal. There's also some that are psychotropic, and so you want to actually know what you're getting into. You don't want to be mixing stuff, and this is definitely, this is definitely something that you have to like really, really take serious and not overdo it. Okay, that's the biggest thing. It's like, I wish that I could just give you a a simple process to follow, but this is the closest that I can do to it. It's understanding that you eat clean, you clean your body, and then as you do that, you can help your body by trying out different herbs, right? I like to use Ayurvedic herbs. And again, there's a lot of these. And so you have to make sure that you know what you're doing, right? So we have some that we recommend that are mild, but not everyone can do that, right? Not everything that I do can be done by everyone, like including eating fermented foods. There are people who have histamine issues, who may react to certain fermented foods. And so, some of you need to start out by building your probiotics, because chances are that you're lacking some, bifidobacterium, which is a strain of probiotics that is usually the one that I see whenever they have, histamine issues. And so there's different strains that you have to build. And so you have to really build from the ground up. And that's basically what I'm teaching through Beer Diet Project, is how do you grow probiotics in your gut? How do you maintain a clean environment? And this is basically what I'm doing. So you see me drinking water, you see me fasting, you see me doing the blue-green algae, which, it's detoxing in and of itself, but it's a way for me to continue to fast. My plant-based ketogenic smoothie, right? So there's no sugar in here, so I'm not feeding any kind of like bad bacteria, and I'm using fat as a source of fuel, which puts me in a ketosis type of state, which is basically the state that your body is in clean mode. That's where your body goes and cleans, which is basically the same thing that happens, okay, when you lager a beer. When you're conditioning a beer, you're lagering a beer, you're basically allowing yeast to clean up. That's what's happening. And in your body, the same thing happens. When you stop eating food, the cells of your body, meaning your probiotics, your yeast and bacteria, they clean up. They go scavenge all the bad stuff and they detox you. That's what's going on. Again, to me, this stuff makes sense because I saw it over and over in the brewing process, right? It made sense why, if I ate bread and then 30 minutes later my belly's blowing up and I'm gassy. When you ferment beer, yeast create carbon dioxide, that's gas, right? You pour beer out, right? There's gas and it builds that foam. Okay, that gas, that carbon dioxide, is a byproduct of fermentation. So I understood that, hey, my belly's blowing up. It feels like someone's pumping air inside of me. That's abnormal fermentation. That's something in your gut basically fermenting. It's not supposed to happen inside your gut, but that's what's happening. And so again, to me, like, this stuff just made sense. And this is why detoxing, it's such a key part of my diet. It's not something that I do, every now and then. Like, now I do it in different ways. I do it by not putting bad stuff in my body, right? So that's why I don't do any supplements. That's why I don't take anything, guys. And again, you can't start out where I'm at. Okay, you can't just, quit doing whatever, right? But I mean, everything that I do, a lot of the things that I do are the exact opposite of what doctors told me to do. Okay, and that's one thing that everyone that goes into my program, like, they go in knowing that what they're going to learn is how to do almost the exact opposite of what the mainstream society tells you. And they understand that the reason for this is because what we're learning here is we're learning health. Okay, I often tell people, it's like, I understand that a lot of people are here because of gut related issues, but don't come to me to learn more about disease, because I don't study disease. I study health. I study how to grow probiotics. I study how to optimize your microbiome to get more energy, sleep better, and feel better. That's what I do. And if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free to reach out to me. You can comment, say optimize below this video. I'll reach out to you. We can connect. I can get an idea and understanding of where your microbiome is at. And if I feel confident I can help you grow probiotics and help you get more energy, sleep better, and feel better, then we can set up a time and talk a little bit more about what it looks like to work with me. But with that being said, I hope that this gives you a good understanding of what detoxing is about and why it's not about taking supplements. It's not about doing cleanses. It's really about understanding that what you're doing is you're trying to keep your overall environment of your body, of your microbiome clean. And it starts out with the foods that you're eating, followed by what kind of detoxes that you do, which, you can do a detox like I'm doing just for a day, and that's good. Or as you get more advanced, like me, you can do fasting for multiple days at a time, which is, one of the things that I'm working to do here over the next few days as I transition from this. But that's basically what I'm doing. I'm literally just cleaning up my gut so that I can go back and regrow probiotics. So any questions that you guys may have on this, feel free to comment, and I'm going to go through. Let's see here. Fanny, what type of water do you put in the water distilling machine? So I have I actually have a reverse osmosis system at home. So the water going into my machine is actually fairly clean. But if you use tap water, oftentimes you're going to see a lot of sediment or different things. There's so much that can go into water. I mean, some of it can be heavy metals, different kind of toxicity that you can see that are visual, but there's also oftentimes a lot of gases, and those gases, oftentimes you don't see it. Sometimes you may see them as, when you first open up your tap water and you fill up a glass, you may see what looks like tiny little bubble formations, right? Those are some sort of gases. What are they? Who knows? Like there's so much that can go into water, and nobody tests. Like there's no test for like any of this stuff. And that's why, like for me, distilled water is the only way that I know that I'm drinking clean water. Everything else, it's just questionable. I don't know. No one can tell you, right? But that's why, like, to me, like that's why it's important for me to have that as my source of water. So that's a really good question, mostly because like there's so many people that look past that, and it's one of the most important parts of my diet. It's like my water, it's the biggest thing. Let's see here. Let me go back to the very beginning. So Monica says bad gut health equals bad brain health. Yes. Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned that, by the way, because one of the reasons why I'm doing this detox, I don't need to do this detox to restructure my gut flora. I've already done that. And, that's not to say that I'm not doing more of that. I am doing more of that. But one of the main reasons why I'm doing this detox is because with everything that's going on in the world, I need to find a way to de-stress. I need to find a way to relax and calm my mind. And that's one thing that detoxing and a plant-based diet has been really good for, is when I go into a raw vegan type of diet and eat a lot of, plants, my mind just calms down. I'm able to meditate. I'm able to relax. And this is part of what I'm teaching in my program, is like, how do you use food? Because I believe that there are certain foods that we use for hormone production. Then there's foods that just help you meditate. They help you, stay calm and relax. And, and this is basically one of the things that I'm noticing. And so, there's the gut-brain connection. I like to call it the microbiome-mind connection. I believe in that 100%. Whereas, the healthier your gut is, your microbiome, the more you're going to be able to tap into your creativity. Like your mind functions better. Your ability to focus, to concentrate, like your mind is just sharper when you clean your gut. This was one of the biggest reasons why I started this. I was running a business when I started. I was about $30,000 in debt because I stopped working my business. I had brain fog. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't really do simple daily things like dishes around the house. How am I supposed to run a business and put food on the table with all of this stuff going on? But this is why I was so motivated to improve my health was not just so that I can feel good, but because I needed to actually be able to function, to be able to, work and do other things like that. All right. Monica, taking pharmaceutical drugs is a big vicious cycle. Drug A helps you with thyroid, however, when you now need drug B to help you with side effects of A. I saw that with grandma, and it's one of the reasons why it never made sense to me to take any of that, because my grandma, when she first went, I think she went in for diabetes or high blood pressure, one of the two, but then she started with one pill and then they gave her a second one because it messed up something else, and then 3 and then 4, and next thing you know, she had a whole bag of like 12 different pills, and that just didn't make sense. And I see that all the time with people. It makes me sad, because none of that, okay, and this is why you be careful with what I say, but none of that is you cannot out supplement a poor diet. Okay, at the end of the day, I don't care what pill you're taking, you still got to fix your diet. Okay, that's bottom line. Like that's what it boils down to. Like you gotta change your diet. You gotta change the environment in your microbiome. And here's the thing: it's like I think of it this way: if you drink water that's toxic, that hasn't been filtered out and cleaned properly, okay, you got to think about that. It's like, how much different will your life be if you actually switch to a clean source of water? And that's just one thing. And start looking at everything else, right? Instead of doing your vitamin D supplement, how different will your life be if you actually eat foods that give you vitamin D? Okay, instead of taking hormone, going through like hormone replacement therapy, doing all these creams and whatever other junk that make you feel good, why don't you eat the foods that actually help you produce hormones? Okay, most people don't even know what these foods are, right? But as you start to understand, everything just kind of like comes together. All right. I want to read this one again, Janae. It gets so cold in the winter, I can barely stand it. I also wear a jacket at work all day in the summer because I can't handle the air conditioning. It's so interesting because like I was the same way, and I live in Arizona, right? Like Phoenix, it gets hot, and so the air conditioning is usually blasting super cold places, and that's what I would do. It's like I would have a jacket with me in the summer in Arizona. It's crazy, but I would get cold. So I totally hear you on that one. Always hot, love air conditioning, and I sweat a lot. So here's the thing: like with hormone imbalances, you're gonna go either cold or you're gonna get the hot flashes. You're looking for that balance, okay? But either way, it's the same problem. It's a gut microbiome problem. Lupe, I have cerebral palsy and H. pylori after a couple of weeks of just minerals, solely salt. I watched baseboards today, and my situation with my illness when I have a burst of energy is rare. So excited to start vitamin D. That's awesome. And this is what I love about this is like, it's so simple, like just water and minerals, like how much of an impact that can have on people, because that's one of the things that I see. It's dehydration, demineralization. And for me to read that, like, thank you so much for sharing that, because this is one of the, like that makes me happy to hear that people are going through this information, understanding it, applying it, and then experiencing results. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm excited for you to start your vitamin D, fermented cod liver oil plus butter oil. Okay, make sure you get that. Message me if you need to know where to get it from. Beth, cortisol creates body fat. Sure, not directly, but it's one of the things that you can see affecting fat metabolism. And again, this has more to do with like your hormones. The combination of these hormones are going to create an environment in your body, and they're going to affect pH to an extent. But what really creates body fat more than anything is toxicity and different kinds of bad bacteria, like yeast overgrowth is one of the main ones that actually produces body fat. And we're over the hour, by the way, but since I'm getting a lot of questions, I'm okay with sticking here longer. So if you guys are cool with me going longer, let me know in the comments below, and I'll stay here as long as it takes for me to answer some questions, because I like the engagement that I'm getting here. So, but going back to what creates body fat, for me, it was more about removing the bad bacteria in my gut, which was removing the source of toxicity that was being created within my body. That's what helped me lean down the most. And that's what I teach, and that's what I've seen is helping, the people that I work with the most. So Lisa, good to see you here. All right. Refresh this. Okay, so all right, so Fanny, what plants do you use to detox yourself? So it depends. And again, this is, well, okay, let me give you to get started. For me, the easiest way to get started is going to be either with, see, the thing about it is it depends on where you're at. Okay, because a very mild detox would be just using green juice. And this is fresh pressed green juice, simple things like cucumber, celery, lemon, ginger, parsley. Those are kind of the main ones that I use. And then you can kind of mix and match with other ones, and don't worry about this whole goitrogenic things with kale or spinach. That's an issue, sure, but we deal with that later. It has nothing to do with what you read online. Anyways, these are the most mild versions. Okay, these are just ways to get some chlorophyll in your body, cleanse yourself out a bit. That's a mild detox. A step up from that would be something like blue-green algae. Okay, blue-green algae is going to be more of a detox, and I guess in between blue-green algae and that green juice will be other algae that aren't as powerful, like chlorella and spirulina, which are still really good. Blue-green algae, however, has a lot of nutrients, and the way that works is not so much that it cleanses you from let me gather my thoughts here. So the green juice and other cleanses will actually clean you from the outside, right? So kind of clean the outside of the cell. Whereas the minerals and the nutrients that you find in things like blue-green algae, they basically power on your mitochondria, which is basically the self-cleansing mechanism, the energy producing part of the cells of your body. And so it's almost like they're the ones that just push toxicity out of the cells. So those are kind of the two ways of cleansing. And those are things that, when you understand and you learn how to use both, okay, you want to clean the outside of your cells, and you also want to turn on the cells so that they self-cleanse, right? Those are the things that you use, and that's where you start to go from mild plants and greens to more advanced Ayurvedic herbs, and it just depends on what kind of stuff you're cleansing. I recommend starting with liver cleanses because that's your main filter that you want to go after. So that's what I would say, for that. Do you have recipes for your detox juices? What do you recommend starting out? So I have videos on my YouTube channel. I'll probably, I'm actually going to be putting a few more recipes for what I'm doing. So you'll get to see that. But the one that I just mentioned, that's for juices, the base that I use for every recipe is cucumber, celery, and well, cucumber, celery, and lemon, those would be kind of the three because they're water rich. So that builds my base. And then from that, you can just add just about anything, mix and match. Anything that's dark leafy green that has chlorophyll, that's what you're looking to cleanse. So things like parsley, cilantro, kale, spinach, all these dark leafy greens, that's what's going to give you that dark green color. Cucumber, kale, cucumber, celery, and lemon, those are more for hydration purposes and just to build that water so that you're drinking a good amount. But that's basically how I go about it. Let's see here. Sarah, ready for better sleep, getting over a surgery and haven't taken this Thursday. Wanted. Thanks for the info. You are welcome. Go through the videos, hydration and vitamin D. that alone will help you way more than pretty much anything that you'll see out there. Janae, need to know what foods make hormones for sure. Healthy fats and cholesterol. Info for the butter oil, please. Okay, I'll send you a link to it. It's on my website, yourdietproject.com/energy jumpstart kit, but that's too long, so I'll just send you a link for it. What about cod liver oil that is not fermented? Will that still work? Great question. So yes and no. So here's all right. This is gonna go longer, but this is a good one to know. This is a really good one to know, because this is what people don't understand, and this is why, like, when it comes to like the products that I use, there's a reason why I use the products that I use. So I want you to think about this, okay? The only difference between, I'm gonna call raw cod liver oil and then fermented cod liver oil, okay? The only difference between these two is that raw means that it hasn't been digested. So all the fats, it's like a chain of fatty acids. So when you eat that, right, your body, it's supposed to basically break that down into smaller components, right? So an omega-9 omega becomes omega-6, omega-6 becomes an omega-3 until you get to like that smallest, type of component. And then from there, digestion continues. That's what fermentation is. It's a continuation of the digestive process. That's where your probiotics turn food into nutrients like vitamins, hormones, and other things like that. So if you have gut issues, okay, there's a reason why a lot of people have gut issues, have low vitamin D, and that's because the strength of your immune system is directly correlated to your vitamin D levels. So if your vitamin D levels are low, your immune system is weak, meaning that your probiotics are weak, meaning that the amount of probiotics that you have is small and it's just weak. So if you take raw cod liver oil and you have gut issues, you're not going to digest the food. And you're probably going to have to rely on some sort of bad bacteria to break it down for you. So you're not going to get the nutrients out of you, and you're not going to get the vitamins out of it because that's what you're lacking. The reason why you eat fermented foods is because it's already digested, the nutrients have already been converted, and you're also getting the probiotics that did this process, which is what you're looking to do. Is you're trying to grow probiotics in your gut. So you're trying to put that stuff back into your gut. Once you fix your digestive system, you can do raw cod liver oil, and when you drink it, your gut is actually going to be able to digest it and turn that nutrition into vitamins. When you have gut issues and you don't have these probiotics, that's not going to happen. And oftentimes you're going to have a hard time digesting it, and you're just going to not feel the greatest. So that's basically, the reason why. So it's not that, it's not that raw cod liver oil doesn't work. It's, it's about what's in your microbiome, what's happening in your gut, right? So when you understand that, then everything else, makes sense. Hannah, how long do you fast? So I'm going to be doing about a 7-day fast. Again, this is advanced. It's not where I would start, but that's basically how long I'm going to fast. Now, every single day, however, for the last 6 months, I've been doing block fasting, meaning I've only been doing one meal a day. So I just have dinner, and then I go a full 24 hours until the next day, and I basically fast the entire time. Although not technically, because I did drink bone broth around 2 p.m. So that kind of, includes a little bit of digestion, but it's practically like a 24-hour fast. So I fast like every single day, intermittent fasting, at least, 6-8 hours every single day. So I'm constantly fasting. Is the fermented cod liver oil and butter together in the same pill? Yes. So, and they have them separate too. So you have to really look at the label. And I get it from Green Pastures, and I recommend just getting it directly from their website instead of Amazon. I'm probably gonna have to change my link on that. And I don't get anything, by the way, for talking about fermented cod liver oil. It's just what I use. But when you go to their website, they have fermented cod liver oil by itself, and they have rich butter oil by itself, and then they have a bottle where it's combined both fermented cod liver oil plus butter oil, and that's what I use. I use the one that's combined because it has a range of nutrients and vitamins, all your fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, all of that. It's in there. So, all right. Is it a good idea to take fermented cod liver oil while you have SIBO? What do you suggest? If I have fermented cod liver oil in the past and felt sick after taking it. Great answer. Thank you. Cool. So this is where it's not so much that like, let me see, how do I want to answer this? It depends. Okay, this is where you have to like really start to, this is where I have to like dig deep to see like what's going on with your gut, because for the most part, most people don't have issues. Like if you have issues with fermented cod liver oil, that's bad. Like that's bad. That's water, minerals, fermented cod liver oil are the one. There's a reason why I start everyone with that. They're like the safest things to do as long as you get the right ones. Okay, because if you've taken other kinds of cod liver oils or fish oils, krill oil, whatever else, you know, some of it is good, but again, when you have gut issues, that's basically that's the thing. And like the vitamin D, it's meant to strengthen what is in your gut that is good, like the good probiotics. If you're at a point where that affects you, that's where like you pretty much need to just fast, and it's not going to be fun, but there's really no other option. And that's basically where I was at, because with all the gut issues that I was having, I was developing food sensitivities, allergies. There was like everything that I ate, even salads, will make me blow up. And that's how I found blue-green algae, because it was the only thing that I could actually take that wouldn't do a lot of that. And it was a way to get nourishment. It's how I started. And for everyone that signed up to my email newsletter, like I said, I'm going to be sending out an email with an interview that I did, you know, with Amy, which is basically the place, you know, up in Klamath Lake in Oregon, where I get my blue-green algae from. This is, you know, I did an interview where we talk a lot about this, but this is the reason why I found this. I was looking for something that I could eat, and, you know, a way to nourish my body without going through all that digestive issue that I was, you know, all the digestive issues that I was having. But that's what I would say. It's like, if you're at that point, I mean, it sounds like you pretty much have to just do that. It's like fast. You got to stop feeding that bacteria and nourish your body. And this is how I did it. It was through fasting and drinking a lot of liquids that would actually nourish me. So look into blue-green algae if fermented cod liver oil really affects you like that bad. Yeah, see, Christina says here, regular cod liver oil hurt my stomach so bad. Fermented does not bother me at all, even if I take 10 capsules, right? Because like fermented cod liver oil, like it's already digested. It's literally just like pure vitamin D and A and a lot of other nutrients for your gut flora. Like your gut flora just takes that up. Like I don't know how else to explain it other than it's the prerequisite to growing probiotics. So what brand? I use the one from Green Pastures. Let me go through. I think I missed a couple here. Yeah, so Fanny's asking about kale, not good for thyroid disease. No, don't worry about that. I'll take on that like another time. But all right. So thank you everyone for engaging. I know it went a little bit over, but I wanted to answer some questions. I hope that this was really helpful. And over the next week, like I said, I'm documenting like what I'm doing, and I'm going to be writing a little bit more about it. And I'm doing this in two ways. So I'm trying to keep in mind everyone that's brand new so you guys have some useful information to actually apply on. But I'm also documenting a lot of this because I'm writing a book on this topic. And, as I'm going through my journey, I'm just basically sharing like what I do. This is me, beer diet project guy. I'm, the guy that uses beer knowledge to change, and optimize his microbiome. That's what I do. So hopefully you guys get the answers that you're looking for. I know what a lot of you are going through, and I know that if you lean into this information, there's a ton of videos in the units tab. There's a lot of videos that honestly have been lost since I've been sharing this for a while. But go through them and watch them over and over because, to me, like this stuff made sense just because of my background. For some of you, you may just have to watch the material over and over until it clicks. Once it clicks, it's simple, guys. These are the only things that I look for: quality of water, minerals, pH, temperature. How is that going to affect the bacteria in my gut? And I look at that in every aspect. When I drink water, when I drink green juices, when I detox, when I eat food, everything, that's what I look at. If you look at if you're following me on Instagram, right, I'm trying out a coffee, right? In that coffee, I get it from a place that's sourced from Brazil that grows at a certain elevation, right? Because that has the perfect temperature. The soil has minerals. They actually treat the coffee cherries right, where they actually harvest them at peak ripeness, which is needed for proper fermentation, which is needed to remove the acidity that a lot of your conventional coffees have. So this doesn't affect the pH of your body the way that other coffees do, right? And so this is the level that I go into looking into food, right? So a lot of people, when they think of diet, they're thinking about, oh, how much protein, fats, and carbs am I eating, and counting calories, and is it keto, is it paleo? Like none of that matters, because you can take a ketogenic diet, and when you understand Beer Diet Project, which is that framework of, okay, look at the foods. Are the foods coming from sources where they're hydrated, have good minerals, proper pH? You can see and understand the difference between a healthy ketogenic diet and an unhealthy one, a healthy vegan diet and an unhealthy one, a healthy paleo diet, an unhealthy one, a healthy carnivore diet, and a healthy one, right? So Beer Diet Project is not about a specific diet. It's about understanding food, understanding how it affects your gut, and ultimately so that you have that knowledge, that wisdom, that power to grow your own probiotics, so that you rely on food as your medicine, because that's what I do. I don't take anything else, and I'm not telling anyone here to do as I do. That's just what I do. Been doing this for 8 years. I have a good understanding to where I feel comfortable and I feel good doing what I do. And I just hope to teach this to more people so that you get to this point where you find that all that you need is food. Okay, I believe that our bodies were designed to live and survive off our natural foods, not man-made chemicals. That's my belief. So if you guys enjoyed it, thank you so much for being here. Reach out if you want to work directly with me. Comment optimize below, and I'll message you, and we'll start talking, and I'll try to figure out where you're at and how and if I can help you. All right. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.